What happens when Hollywood's most iconic voice decides he's done being talked down to? When a legendary actor draws a line in the sand live on one of television's most-watched talk shows. It took Piers Morgan exactly 31 seconds to derail what should have been a straightforward interview. 31 seconds to turn a warm, easy conversation into an explosive on-air clash no one in the studio or watching at home saw coming. The lights blaze. The audience hums with anticipation. Samuel L. Jackson strides onto the set of The Awkward Hour with that unmistakable swagger that has made him one of the most recognizable performers on the planet. The applause is thunderous. He waves, settles into his chair, and nods across to Piers Morgan. Piers reclines a little too casually, wearing that trademark smirk, the one that says he believes he's in control. The one that says he thinks this will be another interview where he gets to needle, poke, and unsettle his guest, Samuel L. Jackson. "Welcome to The Awkward Hour," Piers says, smirk unbroken. "Thanks for having me." "Piers," Samuel replies, calm and measured. He's here to promote his new film, nothing more, nothing less, and for the first few minutes, everything is smooth. They talk about the movie, about the director, about the intense action sequences. Samuel is charming, articulate, professional. The audience is fully engaged. Then Piers shifts in his seat, leans forward, eyes glinting. He's about to stir the pot. "So, Samuel, let me ask you something." He begins with that finissant tone he uses when he's about to drop something loaded. "You've played a lot of tough guys over the years, the guy with the gun, the guy with the attitude. In real life, do you ever feel like you've been typecast? That Hollywood only sees you as one thing?" A ripple goes through the audience. The question has an edge. It's not curiosity, it's provocation. Samuel doesn't flinch. "Typecast? I don't think so, Piers," he replies evenly. "I've played all kinds of roles, dramatic, comedic, everything in between. If audiences enjoy seeing me in certain parts, that's because I execute them well. That's called being good at your job." A perfect answer. Confident, calm. But Piers isn't done, right? "Right," he says, nodding as if he understands, but the tone says he doesn't. "But don't you think you've basically been playing the same character for 20 years? The angry guy. The yelling guy. I mean, honestly, how different is Nick Fury from any other role you've played?" The room freezes. This isn't interviewing. This is Piers poking for fireworks. Samuel straightens slightly, eyes sharpening. "Piers, with all due respect, you're oversimplifying my work. Nick Fury isn't angry. He's a leader, a strategist. He's focused, commanding. If you actually watched my films, really watched them, you'd see the nuance in every performance, a beat. But I guess that requires paying attention." That line hits like a hammer. Gasps, nervous laughter. Piers' smirk evaporates, paying attention. Piers snaps back, his voice rising. "I pay attention just fine. I watch movies. I watch your movies. And from what I've seen, you're basically playing the same guy in different costumes. I'm just being honest." Someone has to say it. The studio goes silent. Hostile now. Not awkward-hostile. For the first time, a flicker of irritation crosses Samuel's face. Someone has to say it. Samuel repeats. Or maybe someone just wants to say it to create a moment. "I came here to talk about my work." Piers not to be insulted by someone who clearly hasn't done his homework. Piers lets out a fake laugh. The brittle kind. The trying too hard kind. "Oh, come on. Don't be so sensitive. This is what we do here," he insists. "We have real conversations. We don't sit here and stroke egos. You're a big boy. You can handle a little criticism, right? And that's it." The moment everything tilts, calling him sensitive, telling him to be a big boy. Dismissing his entire career as a single note. Everyone in the room feels the temperature change. Samuel leans forward. His voice is quiet, but sharpened. Criticism is fine, Piers. I've been in this business long enough to handle it. But what you're doing? That's not criticism. That's bait. You're trying to manufacture drama for your show, and I'm not interested in playing that game. Piers folds his arms across his chest, defensive, not used to being challenged. Not used to someone meeting his provocation with composure instead of chaos. And Samuel L. Jackson. He isn't backing down, and he isn't rattled, not for a second. He's standing his ground with absolute composure, playing a game. Piers repeats, voice dripping with sarcasm. I'm not playing any games. I'm asking you legitimate questions about your career. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Maybe you should stick to reading lines off a script where someone else tells you exactly what to say. A collective gasp sweeps through the audience. A few people even blurt out, "Oh, this is the line." The point where an interview stops being an interview and turns into a blatant attack. Piers Morgan isn't probing, he's provoking. He's being arrogant, entitled, and completely out of line. Samuel looks at him for a long, silent moment. The tension is suffocating. Then, without a word, Samuel reaches up and unclips his microphone. The tiny click echoes through the studio like a gunshot. Everyone knows what's coming. "What are you doing?" Piers asks, and for the first time all night, there's a tremor of panic in his voice. He knows he's pushed too far. Samuel rises slowly, places the mic neatly on his chair, and looks down at Piers with steady calm. "I'm done here," he says softly. The control in his voice sharper than any shout. "I came on your show to talk about my work, not to be disrespected. You want drama? You want conflict? Go find someone else. I have better things to do with my time." Piers shoots to his feet, scrambling, voice cracking at the edges. He knows exactly how bad this looks, Hollywood royalty walking off his show. This clip will be everywhere within the hour. "Samuel, come on. Don't be ridiculous. Sit down. Let's talk about this. You're overreacting." Samuel turns back to him, expression carved from granite. "I'm not overreacting. I'm reacting appropriately to being insulted. There's a difference. Maybe you should learn it." And with that, Samuel L. Jackson walks off the set. Just walks away. The audience erupts in cheering, some stunned into silence. The cameras keep rolling, capturing every second of the moment. Piers Morgan completely lost control of his own show. Piers stands frozen, red-faced and rattled, with no idea what to do next. Backstage, the producers are undoubtedly in full meltdown. This is live television. This wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. One of Hollywood's biggest stars just walked out because the host couldn't keep his ego in check. Piers tries desperately to recover. He turns to the camera, forcing that plastic smile back onto his face. "Well, that was unexpected," he says, voice tight. "I guess Samuel couldn't handle a little honest conversation." We'll be right back after the break. But nobody's buying it. Not the audience. Not the viewers at home. Not anyone who just witnessed that train wreck. Everyone saw exactly what happened. Piers Morgan insulted his guest, talked down to him, pushed for a reaction, and when Samuel had enough dignity to walk away, Piers tried to twist the narrative. Let's rewind for a moment, because this didn't come out of nowhere. This was the inevitable result of Piers Morgan's entire approach to interviewing. He doesn't conduct conversations. He manufactures moments. He hunts for viral clips. He wants to be the center of gravity in every room he enters. From the moment the interview began, you could see it, the way he looked at Samuel, the way he phrased his questions. Everything was engineered to get under Samuel's skin. When Samuel spoke about his movie, Piers barely listened. He was simply waiting for his next chance to poke. He started with a typecast question, loaded, dismissive, designed to sting. And when Samuel handled it with intelligence and composure, Piers pushed harder, because that's the thing about Piers, he doesn't stop. Or maybe he does know when to stop and simply doesn't care. Because for him, the line is where the attention is. The line is where the ratings live. When Samuel called him out calmly, precisely for oversimplifying his work, Piers' ego cracked. Instead of backing off, he doubled down. He called Samuel sensitive, told him to be a big boy, spoke to a legendary actor like he was a child who couldn't take a joke. That condescension, that entitlement, that's why Piers Morgan is so hard to deal with. He thinks the interview revolves around him. He thinks guests are props. He thinks their purpose is to make him look good. But Samuel flipped the script. He reminded Piers and the entire audience that he doesn't have to sit there and take it. He can stand, unclip his mic, and walk out. And when Piers made that final jab about reading lines off a script, that was the final straw. That was the moment Samuel decided he was done. Think about what Piers said for a second. He didn't just criticize Samuel's work, he basically told him that all he does is read lines, that he isn't intelligent or capable enough to handle a genuine conversation. To say that to anyone would be insulting. To say it to Samuel L. Jackson, a man with decades of experience, a man who has worked with the greatest directors alive, isn't just insulting. It's disrespect on another level entirely, and Samuel handled it flawlessly. He didn't yell. He didn't swear. He didn't explode. He simply stood up, unclipped his microphone, and walked away. Calm, controlled, certain. That takes strength. That takes real confidence. Because walking away, especially when someone is deliberately trying to provoke you, is harder than fighting back. Piers wanted an outburst. He wanted Samuel to snap, to shout, to give him the viral meltdown he could plaster all over the internet. Samuel gave him a moment. Just not the one he wanted. Instead of looking like a man who couldn't handle a question, Samuel looked like a professional. And Piers looked like a bully who finally pushed the wrong person. Then Piers tried to spin it laughably. He claimed Samuel couldn't handle an honest conversation, as if his behavior had been honest instead of intentionally antagonistic. As if there's something weak about having enough self-respect to walk away from someone who's talking down to you. Nobody believed him. Not the audience. Not the crew. Not the viewers at home. Because here's the truth Piers doesn't want to face. He lost control of that interview the second Samuel stood up. All of his power as the host evaporated the moment his guest decided he was done tolerating the disrespect. And for someone like Piers, someone who built his career on poking, prodding, and pushing people to their breaking point, that had to be humiliating. There's a clear difference between challenging and being rude. Between tough questions and personal attacks. Piers crossed that line so far he couldn't even see it behind him. Meanwhile, Samuel stayed composed from start to finish. Even when Piers tried to get under his skin, Samuel answered thoughtfully. He defended his work with grace. He called out Piers's tactics without sinking to his level. And when it became obvious Piers wasn't interested in a real conversation, when he was only interested in baiting Samuel into a reaction, Samuel chose to leave. Not out of anger, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. That's what makes Samuel the hero of this moment. He knew his worth. He knew he didn't have to sit there and accept disrespect from someone with an agenda. He valued his time and dignity far more than the cheap ratings Piers was scrambling for. And Piers, he revealed exactly who he is, an entitled host who thinks he can say anything without consequence. A provocateur who values conflict over conversation. Someone who would rather score points than listen. Someone who, when confronted with his own behavior, immediately tries to make the other person the problem. The contrast couldn't be clearer. On one side, Samuel L. Jackson, professional. Dignified, willing to engage but unwilling to be demeaned. On the other, Piers Morgan, provocative, condescending. Chasing drama instead of dialogue. And that moment, the moment Samuel stood up, everything. It was the instant every one of Piers's tactics collapsed. The second the power dynamic flipped. Piers believed he could push and poke, and Samuel would sit there because that's what guests are supposed to do. But Samuel reminded everyone watching, you do not have to sit and take it. You can leave. The look on Piers's face as Samuel unclipped that mic said it all. That flash of panic, that realization that he'd pushed too far. That knowledge that this was about to blow up and he was the villain of the story, not the clever host who got his guest. And his response telling Samuel not to be ridiculous. Insisting he was overreacting was textbook deflection. Classic behavior from someone who knows they're wrong but refuses to admit it. Samuel's final words before walking out are crucial. Maybe you should learn the difference between overreacting and reacting appropriately to being insulted. A perfect answer. Because he was absolutely right. He wasn't overreacting. He was reacting exactly the way any person should when they're being spoken to with disrespect. We have this strange cultural expectation, especially for public figures, that they're supposed to swallow it, smile through it, laugh it off. And if they don't? If they decide they're done being disrespected, suddenly they're difficult, sensitive, or unprofessional. But that's nonsense. Standing up for yourself isn't unprofessional. Allowing someone to mistreat you isn't professionalism, it's surrender. And Samuel L. Jackson refused to surrender his dignity. Just to keep an interview moving, what he showed the world was simple. It's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to say, this isn't acceptable and I'm not staying here for it. That isn't weakness. That's strength, real, grounded, principled strength. And think of all the other guests who've sat across from Piers Morgan caught in that same trap. How many of them wanted to walk off, but didn't because they were afraid it would look bad? How many tolerated treatment they didn't deserve because they felt pressured to sit politely and take it? Samuel did what so many probably wished they could do. He set a new standard. He proved you don't have to swallow disrespect. It's because the other person has the title of host or the show has millions of viewers. Your dignity is always worth more. And the way he did it, calm, collected, zero theatrics, made the moment even more powerful. There was no anger-driven impulse, no emotional outburst. It was a clear decision based entirely on principle. A quiet, devastating statement. You don't get to talk to me like that. Piers thought he could get away with it. He thought he could poke, prod, insult, and then somehow come out looking like the tough, incisive interviewer. But he misread the room, and he misread the man in front of him. He underestimated Samuel L. He paid for it. Because now, instead of a controversial but watchable interview, Piers has a walk-off burned into the internet forever. And people aren't talking about Piers Morgan's hard-hitting journalism. They're talking about how his guest stood up, calmly removed his mic, and walked out. Moments like this reveal character. Under pressure, people show who they really are, and that's exactly what happened here. Samuel proved himself to be exactly who we already believed him to be. Professional, principled, self-aware, unwilling to compromise his worth for anyone. And Piers revealed himself too. Someone who believes he can dish out disrespect without facing any consequences. Someone who mistakes antagonism for insight. Someone who, when confronted with the fallout of his behavior, immediately tries to blame the other person. The audience reaction said everything. When Samuel walked off, people applauded. When Piers tried to spin it, everyone saw right through him. They knew who crossed the line. They knew who kept their dignity. This wasn't about Samuel being unable to handle criticism. This was about Samuel refusing to sit there and be talked down to by a host who thought he was untouchable. And Samuel showed him on live TV that nobody is untouchable when they choose disrespect. 31 seconds. That's all it took for Piers to torpedo what should have been a simple interview. 31 seconds of condescension, needling, and cheap provocation. And in response, Samuel gave a masterclass in self-respect. So what will people remember years from now? They'll remember Samuel L. Jackson standing up literally and figuratively for himself. They'll remember him refusing to play Piers Morgan's little game. They'll remember the dignity, the composure, the finality of that walk-off. And they'll remember Piers Morgan standing alone on his own set, scrambling to explain why his guest had just left, trying to salvage his image, trying desperately to regain control but failing. Because everyone had already seen enough. Everyone knew who the villain was.